Um, I haven't been able to make videos because I'm working. I'm trying to get my cars, my house, and my supplies in order. And I've just been in a real crunch for a long time, pretty severe financial hardships. I'm not complaining. I don't want any money. It just is what it is. I can't make videos until I quit or something happens again or whatever. But I thought when I do have time, I can just start telling some personal stories. So this will be my testimony, and it's about what happened to me at the eclipse in 2017. I wrote this story out before, maybe like a year and a half ago. I have it on a WordPress site, which I will try to remember to link in the description. I glanced over it recently because I was sending it to someone, and there's like a lot of curse words and stuff in it that I probably wouldn't write it the same way now, but it is what it is. I talk how I talk, and I talk how maybe some of the people that listen to me talk, and it is what it is. I'm not going to rewrite it or change it now. But this will be kind of like a extended version, and I might do a few parts of these, just my personal story. Not like all the way back to childhood, maybe eventually, but this is like I'm going to start at the end, what most recently happened to me. So I guess where I'll start is in 2010, I went to jail for about a year. That was the end of a real long, rough paper route. I'd been on drugs pretty much forever, since I was like 12 or something. Always in trouble, and it kind of culminated with me. I was in college because I was really smart. Even though I never did any schoolwork, it was pretty easy for me, so I went to a good college. But I got kicked out of school, thrown in jail. Had a ton of student loans and just a lot of bad stuff. And I stayed clean ever since then, though. From that year I did in jail, but I didn't have any kind of spiritual awakening. It wasn't anything like that. It was just I knew I never wanted to do drugs again or live like that again, but it was more material. I didn't want to be a failure anymore. I didn't want to be a loser anymore. I knew I had to do something with my life. I wanted a jet ski and a house and a truck. I wanted stuff. So I got out of jail. Things are going good, but I'm living in a kind of crazy living situation. But I'm staying clean. And I had a 1 to 2 followed by 5 years of probation. So a year of jail, a year of parole, and 5 years of probation. So all in all, it was going to be a 7-year stretch, which is interesting because I've noticed all these things are in like 7 years or 3.5. It's like a 7-year spiritual sine wave. And there's another one, like a physical wave. And they're out of phase. So you hit these things every 3.5 years. Physical, spiritual, physical, spiritual. It's what it looks like to me, at least. So, and I had also been trying to read the Bible this whole time for maybe 3 or 4 years, but I wasn't Christian. I wasn't spiritual. I didn't believe it. Really, the reason I was reading it was like my intellectual arrogance more than anything else. I liked talking to the Jehovah's Witnesses. I liked schooling them. But I really didn't understand anything in the Bible. I kept trying to read it, even before all that happened. I'd always been trying to read it, and I never understood any of it. It was like Japanese to me. It was like I was just looking at hieroglyphics or something like that, and I never got anything out of it. It was so tedious and hard. And I considered myself like a hardcore logical atheist. And that probably had a lot to do with I was like forced into Catholicism as a kid in Catholic school. I was forced to get Catholic baptized when I was 7 or 8, and there was just the whole thing was a lot of horrific experiences. The nuns and priests were evil. I saw them abuse retarded kids and laugh at them, and just, you know, kids getting raped and drugs. It's just horrific. So I considered myself a logical atheist, but the truth was I'd always seen things ever since I was a kid that didn't fit into the material paradigm. So even though I thought of myself as a logical atheist, the truth was I just hated God. I hated God and I hated the Bible because of all the Catholic school stuff. I mean, I think that's on purpose. I think they maybe engineer these situations because I associated that with God and the Bible. And it took me 20 years to deprogram myself enough to return to the Bible and realize that all the things they were teaching me had nothing to do with the Bible. It was just perverted, dogmatic, death cult shit from Catholicism, and it wasn't actually the Bible. And the things that Joel Osteen and all these Billy Graham people on TV said, prosperity gospel, that wasn't the Bible either. Nothing a man ever told me what was actually in the Bible. But that's where I was at. Hardcore logical atheist, clean for a few years, and about 3.5 years after I got out, things started getting really difficult for me again. I never had a problem with my parole or probation. I had the same PO the whole time. Met with him, all good the whole time. Then one day, my PO doesn't show up to my appointment. So I call him and he doesn't answer. Just never shows up. So I call him the next day, leave a message, say, hey, am I okay? Am I in trouble? You never showed up. Can you call me back? Call him the next day, no answer. No return call, just stops coming. This goes on for maybe like 2 or 3 weeks of me calling and leaving a message every day. Then one day I call and my PO answers the phone. And he sounds very shocked, surprised, like he answered it by accident. He didn't mean to answer it. He's like, hello? I was like, hey, it's Ben. Am I okay? Do we need to meet or what? Whatever happened? I've been calling you every day. He sounds super nervous. He says, I don't have my planner book with me right now. Let me go to the car real quick, grab my planner, and I'll call you right back in 1 second. I said, okay, cool. Boom, he hangs up on me. Never calls back. So after that, I think, well, screw it. I did my part. I've been calling every day. I don't know what's going on, but they know where I live. They know my phone number. They know where I work. Like, I'm not hard to find. So long story short, they never contact me again. Never shows up. And a couple months later, I'm driving one night and I get pulled over. And the police tell me there's a warrant. They know who I am. Are you Benjamin? Benjamin? Yeah, I'm Benjamin so-and-so. Pull me out of the car. Arrest me. They say there's a warrant for my arrest for absconding, which is like escaping from prison or running away on your parole or whatever. I say, that's ridiculous. Well, there's no arguing with them. I say, can I at least call someone to pick my car up? They throw me in the car. They leave the keys in the ignition, the car running. in a parking lot in a bad neighborhood with the door wide open and take me to jail. Don't let me call anyone anything. While I'm in there, it takes me a few days to get a phone call. I'm in there for about 2 months, but while I'm in there, they bring me in. They say, we have to vaccinate you. They give me supposedly a TB vaccine in my arm, which I didn't want, but you have no choice. If you won't take it, they'll beat you up and restrain you and give it to you anyway. So they do it. The next morning, I get a call out of the cell block. They bring me to the nurse again, same nurse, and they say, hey, you have to get your TB shot. I say, I just got it yesterday morning. Don't you remember? It's the same lady. Sorry, there's no record of it in the paper. I say, but look at my face. Don't you remember doing it yesterday? Well, I might remember, but I have to because that's what the computer says. I don't want to do it. They restrain me, do it again. They bring me in the same afternoon, same day, and do it again. The next day, they come transfer me to a different jail where they say I have a warrant also, which is all bullshit. When I get there, they do the same thing again. So they force vaccinate 4 TB shots in me in 3 days. Finally, I get to talk to someone, a social worker or something. They say, hey, why'd you start doing drugs again? Why did you abscond? I said, I didn't do anything. This whole thing is insane. I said, let me out, please. Let me see a judge. Let me see someone. They say, oh, come on, you're a liar. We know you're getting high and you're a criminal. I say, give me any kind of test you have. Urine, blood, hair, whatever. I'll take all the tests. They all come back clean. I'm like, huh, that's weird. So why'd you run away? I was like, I didn't run away. This is just like serious matrix glitches starting to happen all over the place in my life. So eventually I get out with no new charges, no new nothing. They just act like nothing ever happened. And I have like 2 more years of my probation, just like it should have been. But now I'm even more angry than I was before at the world. And I really see the evil now, and I see the game. But I'm still no spirituality, no God, no nothing. So my new approach is, if that's the game, fine. I'm going to play the game. No rules. There are no rules other than don't get caught, win, you know? And the way I'd been my whole life, like, I never really had a big problem with like hurting people or anything like that. So I said, that's what I'm going to do. And I was really getting to the point where I was ready to do pretty much anything to get ahead, to make it. Like I always had little offers, opportunities, like, oh, you can make a lot of money, but you got to do something bad, obviously. Hey, you can make $1 million, but you got to do this. And it was always bad, you know, you got to hurt someone or whatever. And basically, I was just about ready to do that. And I was sitting in my house one day, completely sober, years clean, sitting on my bed, wide awake, middle of the day, like 1, 2 in the afternoon. And I'm sitting on my bed in front of my laptop. And I remember I was looking into the camera of my computer, the camera, and I was thinking, I wonder who's watching me. I wonder who's on the other end of that little eye. I wonder who's watching. And all of a sudden, something happened that it like never happened to me before in my life. Which was, I'll call it a vision. All of a sudden, I had a vision. But I want to be clear, even in the past, when I did use drugs and psychedelics, I had never had a hallucination before in my life. Never. Not even on psychedelics or anything. I mean, obviously, I had seen distortions and that kind of stuff that happens on psychedelics, but never saw something that wasn't there. Never like an actual hallucination. So I'm looking at the camera on the laptop, and all of a sudden I realize I remember something, and I start laughing hysterically, like the funniest joke I've ever heard. And all of a sudden, it's like I'm standing up. It's like I get super tall. And I'm way up in the air, like 1,000 feet tall or something like that. But the whole time, I'm still aware of my body, regular, what I'm actually seeing, and regular sitting on my bed. It's really hard to explain, but it becomes almost like split screen of a video game, and I go up like a giant standing up, like thousands of feet in the air. And I'm in like a whole nother level of reality. And this happens when I realize the joke. I remember this funny thing. And what I see up there is the whole world is covered by like a dark cloud. It looks like water, like black, shiny water, like a blanket. And you can't see anything through it. You can't see the landmass, you can't see the clouds, you can't see the ocean. It's covering the entire earth. And I look around for a second, and it's not, I'm calling it a vision, but it wasn't really a vision. It really happened. I don't know how to explain it. It just really happened. So for a few seconds, I get to perceive this, that the whole world is covered in this like black water blanket, shiny black water blanket. And pretty much immediately I look up and I see that there are 4 giant figures. I get a very bad feeling. They're evil. They're not good figures. And what they look like is like they're in black robes, but featureless. No face cut out, no arms to the robes, just like a big, tall lump. And they're so tall that even though I'm thousands of feet tall and I'm up there, they dwarf me. Like I'm like a regular person again up there, and they're like thousands of feet tall. So it's a good feeling, this laughing, remembering this joke that propels me up there. And then all of a sudden, these things, the 4 of them, notice me. And they they all turn their attention to me. And they look like the Dementors from Harry Potter. But they are like part of the water. It's like if you pulled out a bed sheet, 4 people spread out a sheet and held it up in the air, and 4 people crouched underneath and stood up. So it's like draped over their head, but flat all around them, but then it also wraps up around them, and it is their robe, is the water. Like they're in the lower layer, but projected up, lifting the water up, lifting this black cloud, the sheet up, and it is their like garment. So I only have a few seconds to take this in before they notice me, and they all 4 turn their attention on me. And the only way I can describe it is like the most intense fear I've ever felt. They turn it on me, their attention, and they command me to forget whatever it was that I remembered that brought me up there. And it was almost like a sound, not like a word, forget, but it was almost like in War of the Worlds or something like that, where it's like the super deep, thunderous, but like mechanical sound, like a horn, like the trumpet of God, like rah, but like beamed at me. And it was so intense. I was so scared. I've never felt fear like that in my entire life. And they forced me to forget, but I had to do it myself. I made myself forget because they made me so scared. And it immediately, boom, I was back on the bed. Back on the bed, regular, like nothing ever happened. And I can't remember what it was that I remembered. I've completely forgotten what it was that was so funny, hilarious, that I realized and remember. It's gone. And it's like nothing ever happened. I'm just sitting in front of my computer on my bed again. So I'm back sitting on my bed. And like I said, just to be clear, nothing like that had ever happened to me ever before in my life or since then. Nothing like that has ever happened again since then. I had no idea what it meant, but I could remember it perfectly, vividly. It really happened. I immediately go downstairs and I tell my friend that I live with at the time. He's the only person I ever told for years. And it was immediately after it happened because he was a Hare Krishna, always been into spiritual and woo-woo stuff, and we would talk conspiracy and whatnot. But he was like, wow, it's crazy. I'm sure he thought it was really weird because I was always like a hardcore atheist and kind of giving him a hard time about everything all the time. But he didn't have a whole lot to say about it. I mean, what do you say to something like that? I didn't tell anyone else, and I had no idea what to make of this. These four big figures, the black water, shiny water cloud covering the earth. And I still don't know what those things are. But I have sort of a better idea now, but they were dark. They were not good. Like, I don't think they were the four horsemen. I don't think they were the four-faced cherubs or seraphim or whatever. I don't know what they were, but that's what I saw up there. These four black-robed figures on this dark cloud, water spread over the whole earth. So after that, I still didn't really have any very strong beliefs or morals. I was still kind of trying to consider myself an atheist. But that experience really kind of threw a wrench into my whole belief system and view of the world. I didn't believe in anything yet, but I couldn't really go through anymore with what I was going to do to get ahead. And about 3 more years go by, 3.5 more years, nothing else happens. I continued trying to read the Bible throughout all this time out of my intellectual arrogance and still can't understand anything. It's still Japanese to me. But that event that happened to me is always in my mind ever since then. And I'm always was thinking about it and what it meant and why that happened and everything about it. It really turned everything upside down for me. So I finally come in 2017 to the end of my 7 years, my parole, probation, the whole thing, and I'm out. Around that same time, just before I meet my wife, I get out of the system, which meeting my wife, that's a story for another day, but that was like a miracle in and of itself. So I just get off my probation. I'm free to travel, roam around now. And I hear about the eclipse, the total solar eclipse, the Great American Eclipse of 2017. And I only heard about it probably a few months beforehand, which I already thought was weird because I've always been into the sky, watching the stars and telescopes and all that stuff. So I should have known about it more beforehand, longer beforehand. But somehow I only heard about it a few months beforehand. And I immediately know that I'm going to go. I'm supposed to go. I'm supposed to be there. And I asked my wife, and she's really excited. Yeah, let's go. So pretty much the closest we can go to get in the path of totality is Tennessee. So we plan our trip, the time comes, and we hit the road for Tennessee. And I think we were driving for like 2 or 3 days. We're in my van, my big van. It's dark colored, it's blue. It's a 15 passenger van. There's no air conditioning, and it's in the middle of the summer. So we're driving down 95. It's like 100 degrees, and we're just baking in this van the whole time. And the closer and closer we get to Tennessee, the more and more traffic there is, until it becomes clear that we're in the middle of a mass migration of millions of people crowding into this tiny area to see this eclipse. And it's getting slower and slower to where we're just sitting on the highway for hours still. It's so hot. And I'm looking out the window at all these other booger eaters, Kardashian watchers in traffic. And we start arguing, bickering. We both start getting in a real nasty mood. And I'm just thinking, am I just like the rest of these people? Am I just like the rest of these idiots? Why did I even come here? Why am I here? Why did I think this was a good idea? And I start listening to YouTube, and I hear all the conspiracy channels saying, oh, the eclipse is a psyop. Something bad's going to happen. All the sheep are going there. You're an idiot if you're going. You're a sheep, and something cataclysmic's going to happen. And I just keep feeling worse and worse and stupider and hotter and more uncomfortable. And me and my wife are arguing more and more viciously. And we finally make it to Tennessee the night before the eclipse. The eclipse is the next morning. And we arrive in Alcoa, Tennessee. And it's like an industrial wasteland, a disgusting industrial environment with factories and concrete jungle, parking lot. And it's Alcoa, Tennessee. It's an aluminum smelting town. There's a big aluminum plant there. And it's just gross. But somehow we get the last room at a motel in Alcoa, Tennessee, and it's disgusting. It's like a real crack smoke motel. There's like stains all over the wall, really dirty sheets, bugs, burnt cigarette burns all in the bed and the carpet, gross shit on the wall in the bathroom. We get into the room, and I immediately just go into the bathroom of the hotel room and lock the door, lock myself in there, and just cry. I just break down and cry, and I pray on my knees, and I say, how could I have been so wrong? I'm such an idiot. God, why? Oh, God told me to come here. Oh, I'm on a mission from God. Oh, I'm supposed to be there. I'm a stupid idiot. I'm just yelling at myself, beating myself. Like, how could I have been so fucking stupid to think like something good would happen or that I was supposed to be here? I'm such a fucking idiot. And I just exhaust myself. I come out and I go to sleep. And we wake up the next morning. We come out of the hotel room, and it's a beautiful day. And everything feels better. We feel good. Good vibes in the air. And we realize that we're right on the edge of, is it Big Smoky Mountain National Park or Great Smoky Mountain? I think it's Big Smoky Mountain National Park in Tennessee. So my wife says, hey, let's get out of here. Why don't we drive into the national park and find somewhere to watch the eclipse? And I'm like, yes, definitely, let's go. So we start driving into the park, and it's awesome. Big Smoky Mountain National Park is just like green mountains forever, green rolling mountains in Tennessee, and all these lakes you can see when you're up high, speckled all through the mountains, all these crystal clear lakes. And a lot of them have little pull-offs and like a little dock where picnic area where you can swim or whatever. And when we first get into the park, like the first couple pull-offs, there's like 100 people. So we're like, let's find somewhere less crowded. So we keep driving further into the park. You know, then there's like 50 people, 20 people. We keep going deeper in. It's like 15, 12 people, less and less the further we go into the park. And finally we get to one where there's just like 5 or 6 people grilling, cooking out, swimming by the dock, a little family. And we say, yeah, let's stop here. So we stop there, pull off to watch the eclipse, and we have a good time. We're swimming in the water. The eclipse is just starting. But you know, it takes a long time for it to reach totality. We didn't even have the glasses. Someone gave us 2 pairs of glasses. The people are really nice. It all works out really good. So as it's approaching totality, we're going to get out of the water and lay down or sit down to watch it, or lay down on the dock. And I tell my wife, hey, I want to swim out one more time before we get out. I'm going to swim out real far, have a good swim. Because I used to be a really strong swimmer. I was like certified lifeguard and used to do mile swims and Boy Scouts and life-saving merit badge. So I was a strong swimmer. So I swim out about as far as I'm comfortable out into the lake. And it's a long, kind of narrow lake we're on. And we're looking across short ways. Long ways, it's maybe like 7 miles. And I would estimate maybe like 3 miles across the way we're looking. So I swim out maybe, I don't know, these distances might not be accurate, but I swim out as far as I'm comfortable as swimming. As far as I'm comfortable swimming. I'd say like a half mile, 3/4 of a mile, very far out into the lake. And there's no lifeguards, there's none of that. It's not that kind of a place. It's just a national park, you know, like swim at your own risk. So I swim out as far as I'm comfortable. My wife swims out too, but maybe only like half as far out as me. And just as I'm about to turn around and swim back in, I hear, help! And I look out, and really far out again, like I can just barely see him, there's a guy splashing in the water out there. And I think, you gotta be kidding me. And I think he's joking. I really don't believe it. I think it's a joke. And I scream out, help! He screams again. And I yell out to him. I say, are you joking or are you serious? And he says, help! Again, blah, 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 and I see him blah, 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 go underwater. And I think, oh my God, he's serious. I scream back to my wife. I say, there's someone drowning. And now I'm like full adrenaline rush. I start swimming full speed out to this guy. And it takes me a long time because he's so much further out. He's almost like in the very middle of the lake. And I'm swimming full speed. And while I'm swimming, I see him go under and surface a couple more times. And he's just barely making it back up to the surface by the time I get there. So I finally make it to the guy. It's like a 20-year-old kid wearing glasses, eyeglasses. As soon as I get close to him, he grabs me, scratches me, claws, grabs onto me, and starts pulling me under. And what I remembered from lifeguard and all that stuff is he grabs me, I propel myself as deep as I can under the water, straight down, and he lets go. Because that's like an instinct of drowning people, to grab onto you, but they don't want to be underwater. So if you go deep, they'll always let go of you. So I propel myself really deep under the water, I swim out a few feet, and I resurface out of his reach. And now I'm not messing around. I scream at the guy. I say, roll over and float on your back immediately. I say, if you grab me again, I will leave you and you will drown. And miraculously, he immediately rolls onto his back and floats. Does exactly what I say. So I grabbed the guy and start swimming him in. And it's so far back to the dock where I started from that I maybe swim like 10% of the way back. And I'm like, I'm never going to make it back. I've never been so exhausted in my life. It's impossible. I'm going to drown. We're both going to drown. Somehow I keep going. I make it, a quarter of the way back, and I can't go another inch. I'm going to drown. I say, God, help me, please. I'm going to drown. Somehow I keep going. Halfway back, going to drown. 3/4 of the way back, going to drown. The whole time it's impossible. I don't know how I keep swimming. My wife meets me about like halfway, 3/4, and tries to help me. But if you've ever been in this situation, it's really hard for two people to swim a person in unless you have like a flotation device or something, which we didn't. So she can't really help. I end up like waving her off. Somehow, I don't know how, I get this guy to the dock, and the people that are there, see us coming the last quarter of the way or something, so they're waiting, and they pull the guy out onto the dock, and they pull me out of the water onto the dock. I've never been so exhausted in my entire life. Me and the kid, he's not a kid, he's a man, he's like 19 or 20, we flop on the dock like dead fish and just lay exhausted on our backs for like a half hour without saying anything. And as we're laying there, and we're looking up in the sky, just exhausted, laying on our backs, and it's like, boom, totality hits right then, right as I pull the guy out of the water. And it's like midnight in the middle of the day, pitch black. No one says a word for like 30 minutes. And it's just like magic. And eventually, when we get our breath and stuff, I asked the kid, I said, dude, what were you doing out there? He said there was a swimmer's island out there, which looking back, I remember seeing. Like my brain was like processing all this stuff, even though I was like in a timeless state, like pure experience, vivid awareness. Somehow my brain was still doing all this stuff in the background. Like it saw this swimmer's island out past the kid. It was calculating how far to him, how far to my wife, how far back to the dock, how many breaths to take for a swim. It's measuring my energy levels, like the darkness and lightness. It's just going to get dark, all this stuff that I didn't become aware of until later. But anyway, I remember realizing that there was a swimmer's island past the kid. But I mean, it was so far past the kid, it was meant to be swam to from the opposite shore of the lake. If you know what I mean, sometimes in lakes they'll have these swimmer's islands, which are like anchored, floating like a quarter mile or 100 yards or whatever out into the water, so you can swim out and take a rest, hang out there or whatever. And the kid tells me, yeah, I was hanging out with my friends on that swimmer's island for a couple hours, and they decided they wanted to go in. It's time to go in. So they all jumped in and swam to shore, and I jumped in, but I'm not a very good swimmer, and my glasses got fogged up, and I panicked, and I started swimming in a panic as hard as I could in what turned out to be the wrong direction. So this kid was swimming in a panic as hard as he could out into the middle of the lake, okay? Until he got so exhausted he started drowning, couldn't swim anymore, and screaming for help. And I guess his friends were such total pieces of shit that they didn't even notice somehow and just swam in and left this kid out there without even realizing that they lost him, that he was drowning out in the middle of the lake. So I didn't even talk much to the kid. I never even got his name. He told me the story about the swimmer's island and his friends leaving him out there. And he gives me a hug. And he just and he leaves. He walks away. I never see him again. But it was the kind of experience that I knew, even at the time, my life was changed forever. And I was saved. When I pulled that man out of the water, I was saved. Not him, me. I was saved. And I realized all these other things. Like, that was my real baptism. Like when Jesus asked the Pharisees, the baptism of John, was it of God or of men? And they say, we know not. Like, that was my baptism of God. And I knew then that everything, that God is real. And life is not what we think it is. And everything is planned perfectly. And I knew that obviously this had something to do with the vision, the experience I had 3.5 years before, but it still wasn't clear to me what that meant. I wasn't sure still what the relationship was. But after that, when I read the Bible, it was completely different. Like, everything I was reading in the Bible was like just blowing my mind. You know, not every single line. Some of it's still tedious, but a lot of it, I just could not believe what I was reading. I couldn't believe that these things were in this book. And then I started seeing all this stuff about the dark cloud. A dark cloud is cast over the earth. How doth God know? Can he judge through the dark cloud? And I was like, oh my God, I saw that. I saw that dark cloud, the dark waters. Thou hast laid me in the pit, in darkness, in the deeps. Thou hast afflicted me with all thy waves. And it was just blowing my mind, everything I was reading in the Bible. And it was like I understood the Bible, and it opened up to me. And then I started realizing all these other things. I just started knowing things in a way I can't explain, really. But time goes on, and I sort of start to fade back into the mundane world again. I'm working, I'm being harassed, stuff's regular, and I forget. I start to forget that awesome experience. I start to forget about God. I start to forget that there's a reason and a perfect plan for everything. And I start to get what I would describe as like heavily targeted. Like every time I leave the house almost, I'm getting arrested for no reason. I mean, up to like twice, multiple times a week, where they'll detain me, handcuff me, sit me on the side of the highway in my underwear, hold me for like 3 to 6 hours, trash my car, all my stuff, and then release me with no charges. This is happening like over and over and over and over again. I bring my car to the mechanics. The mechanic calls me, says, hey, all these police showed up, told me I have to give them the keys to your car, and they rummaged through it all and ripped your plates and all your stickers off and said your car's stolen. And and I get hammered. I forget about everything. And then one day it hits me what the vision meant. That it was like preparation for what was going to happen at the eclipse. And it was like, you're going to be drawn up out of the water. I'm going to show you what's real. I'm going to show you that I'm real. I'm going to show you I'm with you. But the world is going to try to make you forget. They're going to try to force your head back down under the water. They're going to make you forget. And I realized what the vision meant. It was preparing me for what was going to happen at the eclipse and preparing me to never forget that. Never forget that experience that I had when I was saved, when I was baptized, when I was drawn up out of the water. And this is why I never feel the need to defend the Bible, because after that, when I read the Bible, I would know things. I mean, not just like memorizing the words, like I would know. It was like my life was in that book. Like it knew me better than I knew myself, and I was knowing things from reading it. And I was having spiritual experiences reading the Bible. And that's why when people say, well, don't you know it was manipulated by King James and the Masons? Don't you know it's just a control mechanism? Don't you know it's all false? It's not a true story. It's just an astrology book. It's just a medical book, an anatomy book. It's just a astrotheology, a philosophy book, all these other things. Never bothered me again, because it's not in the words. Like, words don't mean anything, really. They only mean anything based on our common experience. Like, you learned what the word apple meant because when you were a baby, you heard someone make a sound, the sound apple, and they would point to this thing. And they did it over and over again. You said, hey, they keep making this sound while they're pointing to this thing. I guess that's apple. And you started repeating it, apple. But if they pointed to something, but that depends on your common experience. Then they showed you fire truck. And you said, oh, that's an apple. But then they said red, and they pointed to both. And you said, oh, okay, that sound they're making with their mouth, red. It's something that's similar between this apple and this fire truck. Some common pattern, some common trait between them is represented by this sound, red. But you can imagine if you have different common memories, which we all do, the words will mean different things. So language will always be imperfect. You can never tell the truth under the water in language. But when I was reading the Bible and having these spiritual experiences, yeah, I'm reading the words, but it's more like a transcendental object or something. Like the words in the book are more like a carrier wave that this higher dimensional communication, truth, is piggybacking on. So it doesn't matter how they try to manipulate the words. I don't know how it works, but somehow the truth is in it, and they can't change that. King James, the Masons, any fraternity, no one can change that. Why? There is no why. I don't know why. I'm just telling you what happened to me. So when I would read the Bible, I would have these spiritual experiences. It's like, and I'm not saying Bigfoot is real, but say you're just out in the woods one day, and a Bigfoot runs up and picks you up under its arm and kidnaps you and runs off, brings you to a camp, big community of Bigfoots, and you live there for a week, and then he brings you back and drops you back into the land of men, okay? And you try to tell some people about these experiences, and they say, dude, don't you know that Bigfoot is fake? Look, I can prove that these tracks were faked, so will you just admit that you're lying and it's fake? And you say, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but it happened to me. And they say, dude, look, this guy has been debunked, and I can prove by DNA evidence and this hoax and that. But you see, it doesn't matter what they say because it happened to you. So no matter how much they want to bully you into admitting that it's fake or didn't happen, they can't change your experience, your primary experience. That's the only truth. So it's never going to bother you again when people say you're an idiot or it's a hoax or Bigfoot is fake and they can prove it. Because you've seen Bigfoot. You've seen it. You were there. It happened. And I've thought, obviously, about it ever since. About what that meant with the kid. It was so weird. Like, he was in the exact middle of the lake. Like, he was so far out in the water that you could not see him from either shore. The only way I was able to see him was because on a whim, I decided to swim all the way out 3/4 of a mile out into the lake. And just before I turned around, I could just see him at that point. So somehow I drove whatever, however many miles that is, 500, 1,000 miles throughout the country, drive into the middle of this national park, swim almost a mile out into the middle of a lake to find a man drowning out there and save him and save myself. And I've thought about that kid a lot because I never got his name. And I've wondered a lot if that was even a real person or like if he was an angel or something like that. And it was just all for me. I mean, other people witnessed it. My wife, the people on the dock, it really happened. But I just wonder, like, sometimes be kind to strangers. You could be entertaining angels unaware. Like, was that all just for me? Or did that, like, it was just so bizarre. And the whole thing just seemed so symbolic, like his glasses being fogged up, like saving people who can't see from the dark waters. He's submerged, can't see, his glasses are fogged up. He's submerged under the water and pulling him up out of the water, and it just all seems so metaphorical, and I've just been thinking about it ever since. And a lot of things changed after that. My whole life changed, but I started using my mind differently. I started thinking of my brain and experiencing my brain differently and experiencing my emotions and feelings and everything differently. It was like I had an outside perspective of myself from then on. Because like while I'm swimming out to this guy, my brain is also observing and computing all these different things, like running millions of simulations and crunching numbers. And what my brain saw and calculated while I was swimming out to this guy, completely independently and unknown to me at the time, what it saw was way past the guy, there was a floating dock, the swimmer's island, about 100 or 150 yards from the opposite shore, much closer to the opposite shore than the shore I had come from. And it later turned out that that was where he had come from, this swimmer's island close to the opposite shore. But the point of this is that I wasn't aware of it in the moment, what my brain was doing. In the moment, I was in a timeless state, fully alert, intensely emotionally present, completely engulfed in primary experience, and completely outside and above my brain, my physicality. But even though you vacate your brain and you are operating from the cloud, a higher command line, your brain just keeps going on working nonetheless without you watching it. It really isn't you, your brain. It's literally a computer. It's a tool at your disposal. not where you primarily have to reside, because it is limited, very limited. Even though it's the most advanced, powerful computer in the universe in existence that's ever been created or ever will be created, compared to the levels above physicality and above your brain, it's still extremely limited. And your true higher command center is unlimited. Unlimited. But you need to feed your commands back down into your brain computer in order to express them in physicality, to translate them into this level of reality. But my brain was observing the swimmer's island and the sun and the currents and the distance to shore and all these millions of other factors automatically, even though I didn't become aware of it until I was back on the dock, back in time. And I could go back into my brain, into the records, sit back down at the computer console and review the logs, look at the history and the printouts, see what my brain had been working on independently. And after that experience, I started understanding and using my brain differently. Because once you become aware of these command levels above time, physicality, above your brain, then you can start using your brain like an actual computer. It becomes just a tool for you to use rather than who you are. Instead of being strapped to the chair at the computer, staring at the loading bar all the time, you're free to enter a command into the computer and then get up and walk away and experience other things. And the computer goes ding, like the Easy Bake Oven. Cookies are done. And when it's done loading, you walk over to the desk and sit down. It spits out a printout. You rip it off. You review the printout from the computer. Say, interesting. That's okay, cool. Thanks for that. Then you enter a new command and walk away again. The computer just does whatever task you assign independently, whether you are watching it or not. Like running the disk defragmenter. You don't go in manually and try to correct and compress all these file errors. You just give it the command and you come back when it's done. But if you are unaware of these higher command levels above the brain, then all you know is the brain. You believe you are the brain, and that you have to actually perform all these tedious computations manually. And it seems so daunting, so impossible, that you decide to never enter the command at all. You just give up. It's too hard, too much work. It's going to take too much time. You know what I mean? It's going to take too much time. But once you realize that the brain is only a tool at your disposal, which actually will just operate automatically, independently, even the highest abstractions and the most complex computations are no longer daunting, since you don't actually have to do anything. You don't have to sit there and watch the progress bar of the disk defragmenter load. There's no reason not to enter any command you wish, no matter how difficult or complex. Someone who is trapped at the computer, strapped to the chair, is never going to attempt to compute high-level challenges. They're not going to enter the command to compute and unravel the mystery of human experience, or the mysteries of Scripture, or the nature of time, or the validity of the historical narrative, or even the meaning of the events of their own life, because it would require so much computing power that it seems impossible to accomplish in a linear progression in time. And that's all they can see from underwater. All you can see is time. You can only approach these high-level abstract challenges from above the water, above the brain, outside of time, non-linearly. So you could imagine the truth, what is the primary experience, as the light of the sun. When you are way up in the air above the water, you can see the sun. You just see it for what it is, this ball of pure light from which all the information, all the experience is emanating in every direction. It's just there. Look at it. There it is. You just know it because there it is, right in front of you. But from under the water, from beneath the surface, you can't see the sun as this perfect orb emanating light. Because when the sunlight, the information, hits the surface of the water, it is split and bent, shifted, warped, reflected and refracted at a million different angles. And you see false reflections and images everywhere. And the light is always shifting and swirling with the waves and the currents of the water. And information is appearing and disappearing perpetually. And you can never be sure where the sun really is. And so the problem then becomes not knowing the truth, but communicating it. Communicating the truth. Because even though you may be way up in the air and you can see the sun right there in front of you, undistorted, unchanging, so you know it perfectly, you can know everything from up there, from a very high vantage point, you're all alone up there, like a fish out of the water. And when you look down, you see everyone else swimming around under the water. Millions of fish swarming in the water and being taken in nets and consumed and snared with hooks and caught in traps, which could easily be avoided if they had this higher vantage point up in the air. So you decide you will help them. You will go back down under the water and tell all the other fish the truth, who are your family and friends and everyone you care about under the water. But as soon as you do this and submerge yourself again with all the other fish so you can communicate to them this truth you saw up top, as soon as you go back under the water, you can't see the sun anymore. So you can't point to it. You can't show them. But you remember. You know the truth. You remember what the sun looked like and what the water looked like from way up in the air. But the other fish don't know. They don't remember. They never had that primary experience. So you have to try to translate that pure truth into language again. You have to run it through the brain computer to put it into this binary format that you can transfer to the other fish, that you can send to their computer. But in doing that, in bringing the light under the water into language, it becomes refracted, warped, distorted by the water again. It becomes inherently false when you try to translate this higher perspective into a lower dimensional format, because there's always a loss and a distortion of the light, of the information. Because everything under the water is divided. Everything is inherently subjective in individuated consciousness. Language is completely subjective. Symbols are completely subjective. They don't actually objectively mean anything. The written word, the sounds you make with your mouth, the gesticulations of your hands, the images you scribe mean nothing objectively. Nothing. They only have any meaning based on common memories, common experience, analogy. All thought is analogy. You know what red means because you heard the sound when someone pointed to an apple and then a fire truck, and you perceived an analogy between the apple and the fire truck. There was something common to both, and it's represented with a sound and a symbol. Red. But no one has the same memories. No one has the exact same experience. So there is no objective meaning of anything when you are under the water, when you are operating in language from the brain computer. So there is no way you can ever possibly communicate truth under the water. Truth can only be known, experienced directly. It can never be communicated analogously. And another thing I realized when I started understanding the Bible and understanding my own life and my own memories, my own experience, is that we really are under a dark cloud. When the 70 evil ancients say, God hath forsaken the earth, God seeth us not. Can God, how doth God know? The arrogance, how doth God know? Can he judge through the dark cloud? I realize that this is not metaphor. We really are under a dark cloud. And these people really believe that they are hidden from God's sight. They really believe that they can do anything in secret, in the darkness. So when we showed up, when they see spirited people or people in Christ, they know that God can see them. They're exposed, and that's why they hate you, because they thought they were hidden under the dark cloud. But when they see you, in a way, they're seeing Christ. They're seeing God in you, Christ in you, and that's why they hate you. That's why they don't want you here. That's why they want you out, because they know now that they are exposed